All right, good afternoon. I would like to call the August 24th, 2017 meeting of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District to order at 1:04 p.m. Could open the machine for a roll call, please. Let the record reflect that all 9 council members are present. I'd like to thank Councilmember Solvant and Councilmember Edgecombe for the great accommodations here today. I know it's late notice, so yeah, no ferry. All right, if you please stand. Ms. Marcotte will lead us in a prayer, and then we'll proceed with the Pledge of Allegiance.
We take this moment to acknowledge Almighty God and thank Him for our bountiful blessings, especially for this parish's natural resources. We give thanks to God for our brave and courageous men and women in our military who daily risk their lives to protect our precious freedom, and we pray for our world leaders to know how to obtain world peace. We pray that this government body, comprised of both council and administration, will always serve our parish with honesty, humility, and equality to all, and for the wisdom to know right from wrong and the courage to do which is right. And as this government body gathers here today, we pray that we will be spared from all harm and destruction during this hurricane season. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Item 2, we have no executive session. We'll move to item 3, the status report by the Executive Port Director. General Sanders.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, and members of the board. I am Sandy Sanders, Executive Director of Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District. What follows is my Executive Director's report for the reporting period of 27 July to 23 August. Good afternoon, Mr. President. I did not see you over there. During this time frame, I presented to the RPC, the Regional Planning Commission Board, a port update regarding the means of onward movement of cargo that we will still implement in our port. The presentation was very well received, and they asked for a return within 5 months to come and give a progress report to the board. We also had an audit review by Camnetter and Associates. We reviewed the 2016 data, and also Mr. Camnetter talked to us about the statewide policy changes that were upcoming for 2017. We met with a Danish service provider that wants to put in LNG bunkering stations at our location in the river and the northern sites that we have selected in Memphis and St. Louis. We signed an NDA, and there will be more to follow as we progress with this. Lastly, a good news story about our staff. The Authority 2 responded to a tug taking on water in the Mississippi River, and the captain of the boat, Tarvis Ottoman, and the rescue engineer, Gavin Hamilton, they were the first on the scene, and they stayed with the scene until the tug was rescued. No injuries were noted, and also the folks on the tug had very high praise for our folks. So I'd like to publicly acknowledge them, even though they're not here. Mr. Chairman, subject to your questions, the questions of the board or the audience, this concludes my report.
All right, thank you, Director Sanders. Anyone from the council have any questions or comments to Mr. Sanders or the port? Anyone from the audience? Okay, thank you. With none, we'll move to item 4, bids and advertisements. We have none. Item 5, introduction of ordinances, resolutions. Actually have quite a few. Mr. Lapine, I don't think he has any. Mr. Juneau, Mr. Russo. Mr. Russo has one.
It's a resolution authorizing the Executive Director, Maynard Sandy Sanders, to negotiate and enter into an agreement with Mercury Public Affairs to provide consulting, advisory, and lobbying services regarding port representation at the federal level and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
Mr. Bartholomew?
None.
Burt?
Have none.
Ms. Solvant? Ms. Edgecombe? Ms. Williams? I'll revert back to Mr. Lapine. Mr.
I have
Lapine.
none.
A resolution to cancel the November 23rd, 2017 and December 28th, 2017 regularly scheduled port meetings due to the Thanksgiving holiday and the Christmas holiday, and to schedule a special port meeting on November 9th, 2017 and December 14th, 2017, and otherwise provide with respect thereto. A resolution authorizing Maynard Sandy Sanders as Executive Director of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District to extend the current consulting agreement with Ladder and Bloom, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. An ordinance to amend the Plaquemines Parish Port Harbor and Terminal District 2017 operating budget of revenue and expenditures, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. An ordinance authorizing and directing the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District Port Executive Director Maynard J. Sandy Sanders to enter the First Amendment to the option to lease agreement, the amendment as set forth in attached Exhibit A. An ordinance to amend the 2017 Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District 5-year capital improvement budget and otherwise provide with respect thereto. An ordinance to fund classified positions for Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District pursuant to the amended Civil Service Pay Plan and Classification Schedule adopted by the Civil Service Commission on August 3rd, 2017, reallocating several classifications and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. An ordinance to fund classified positions for Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District pursuant to the amended Civil Service Pay Plan and Classification Schedule adopted by Civil Service Commission on August 3rd, 2017, reallocating several classifications and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. A resolution authorizing the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District Administration to exceed the cap established for professional service with Dwight Cameron and suffering for legal services and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. That's all. All right, Ms. Marcotte, we'll move to 6A.
A resolution adopting the addition to the accounting policies for the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District, the port.
I'll offer. Second by Ms. Williams. Mr. Sanders or Mr. Matthews?
This ordinance is in accordance with the port's annual accounting policy update. It also updates in addition to the new agreed upon procedures that have been adopted by the state legislative auditors. So in order to put the port in compliance with those agreed upon procedures, we needed to add a couple additional policies. So this includes a couple of new policies in addition to updates to the existing policies in accordance with the state policies. I do an annual update to make sure that the port is, keeping up with the state amendments and adjustments.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the council? Any questions on this from the audience? With none, I will open 6A up for a vote. The record reflect that the resolution passes 9-0. Ms. Marcotte, 6B, please.
A resolution of the Plaquemines Parish Council in its role as the sole governing authority for the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District to clarify the administrative operations of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District as provided in Resolution Number 14-223 and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
I'll offer. Second by Mr. Lapine. Basically what this is, in consultation with the audit committee, we made some changes based on Resolution 14-223, which was adopted by the council as the Port Harbor and Terminal District back in 2014. Just clarifies some of the language in there. I'm not sure if anyone wants to comment from the audit committee on it. Chairman, Mr. Russo, you want to make any comments on that?
I would like clarification of it, if you don't mind.
Okay. Mr. Russo?
Yes, currently, the Internal Audit Department monitors and verifies expenditures that are made on traveling, entertainment, credit card use, and so forth. And what this does, this brings the port under the same scrutiny that the rest of the departments have in the parish, as per the charter of the section that's quoted in here, Section 708.
Any other questions or comments from the table?
Yeah,
Salva?
just a comment, Mr. Russo, so for the purpose of the audience, so you're saying that prior to this legislation, they have not been under the same type of scrutiny that all other departments?
Well, prior to this, I don't know that, and there was an effort made by the audit committee to extend its authority per charter to the port. We had some discussion, and after working through some of the issues, they have agreed with legal counsel that they are subject to the charter and that they are willing to cooperate and comply with the ordinance as we cite from the charter to be able to undergo the scrutiny that's desired.
Okay, thank you.
Any comments from the audience?
So, Mr. Russo, what you are saying, there's some transparency now in expenditures made by the port, such as travel and entertainment expenses. Would it be made available to the public also?
Mr. Henry, their travel expenses have always been available to the public with a simple request under the Public Records Law. What we have done is taken this a step further to allow the audit committee to verify and review their expenditures for travel and credit card uses. And it's like every other employee in the parish. They get their mileage checked. They get their expenses checked. Well, this will make the port submit their invoices, their receipts rather, and the Internal Audit Department will scrutinize them. And if there's a way that we can help their finance department correct something, we will. If we can make recommendations for improvement, we will. And if we find something that's not proper, we will inform them and anybody else that needs to be informed. But their records are always open to public review because it's expenditure of public funds, and a simple request for those records can be made, and they will be provided.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the audience? From the table? With none, we'll open up 6B for a vote, please. Let the record reflect that the resolution passes 9-0. 6C, Ms. Morcott.
A resolution authorizing Maynard J. Sandy Sanders, Executive Director of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District, to enter into a services agreement with Intermed LLC relevant to the management services needed for the moving of Port Ship Service, Inc. business facilities at Tract B-3 to Tract H, which tract is currently owned by Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District, and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
I will offer. Second from Mr. Edgecombe. Basically what this is the resolution to authorize the executive director to sign a contract with the chosen of the selected bidder to move port ship services from B3 to the port property to clear the way for the development of Venture Global LNG facility. So I will, if you want to explain any further, or I'll just open up the questions from the table. Any questions from the table?
The cost.
It's $125,000 is for the project management fee.
That is correct, and is also in the resolution.
Okay. And I went over the contract. I sent the contract to you guys yesterday after, actually Monday, after going through some scrutiny and cleaning it up, making sure that it's specifically for the project management. No economic development, nothing that was in the RFP, but it's basically
It's only for B3 in that it is the port really making sure that they complete their obligation for the agreement with Venture Global to have that area for their operations once they're ready. So this is simply just an obligation that we're taking care of that's in our contract with Venture Global.
All right, and I have a copy, if nobody has a hard copy of the service agreement with the attachments. I'll open up any questions from the table. Mr. Russo?
Yes, after our discussion yesterday, I expressed my concerns about Section 2.2 on the expenses that are passed through the agency and being marked up 15%. Would you elaborate on that?
Sure. The Section 2.2 that you're discussing is for any type of service or equipment that is needed that the project manager does not necessarily supply themselves and would need to go get a contract for. So as we discussed yesterday, it's at 15% markup. If these services are needed, the contractor on behalf of, the port manager on behalf of the client, which is Plaquemines Port, will then on behalf of them be able to purchase these items if needed. Now, they were at 15%, above the cost. However, I've spoken with the potential project manager, and we can negotiate and be very flexible to actually push that down to 5 to 10%, which I may recommend at 7.5%. The other option is that as a port, we can go ahead and develop those contracts with individual vendors if we see fit and negotiate them so that we don't have that 5 to 15% markup. Obviously, that's going to take away time from us in administrative and operations, but if we need to do so, we can, and they're very flexible, and we've worked that out. So I'm glad that you and I had a chance to talk yesterday and also speak with the chairman as well and other members of the commission to work this out. So it looks like we're in a positive situation to move forward with this contract because we'll be able to be flexible if that's an issue ongoing.
Well, as we met yesterday, I told you it was an issue for me to be able to have contracts that are flowing through this consultant and being marked up 15%. And I guess what I'm really looking for is to find out what, in your discussion, type of contracts do they foresee having to come through and being marked up 15%?
Well, the issue is, do they need those services or equipment? And it's not necessarily there's a need, but if so, based on as the project moves forward and you need a little flexibility to get things moving, that was the initial contract we had. However, I was able to negotiate with the project manager to say, I understand this could be standard, but we need to be able to be flexible in this. And we were able to look at in between 5 to 10%, which as a commission, if you guys have any input, I would love that. As far as what number would that be, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10? Or if you decide that as a port, we should just go ahead and develop those individual contracts ourselves with those particular vendors that he may need, we can do that as well. So we're very flexible to move this project forward, and so is the potential consultant.
Well, as I stated yesterday, I would prefer to see the 2.2 section removed and that the port handle the contract so there'll be no markup. And that's what I told you yesterday, and I didn't change my mind, especially if you negotiate it to the point where we can do that, that would be great. So I'd like to make the amendment to delete the section 2.2.
Then you're talking about 2.1 or 2.2?
If you look at Exhibit B, basis for compensation, under Section 2, project-related expenses, Section 2.2 reads, the following expenses are billed at cost plus 15%. 2.21, outside testing agencies. 2.2.2, services by consultants, other professional or advisors retained for the project. 2.2.3, any other third-party services required by the project. 2.2.4, equipment, rentals, or lease. What is your opinion?
My opinion is that I think we should be able to say, let's negotiate a specific percentage within 5 to 10% with the project manager, and then it also allows us to say either the project manager will go out and get the contract at the above cost, or we will decide to go out and get the contract ourselves, so that way it's not additional cost. So essentially we could do both based on it as needed, so that we can have those options based on certain expertise, whether we know potential vendors and what we need exactly, or based on the expertise of the project manager, they would, on behalf of the port, make those negotiations.
All right. Mr. Russo offered an amendment to delete 2.2.
Second.
Second by Mr. Bartholomew. We'll vote on the amendment to remove 2.2. I'll open it for any discussion.
Yeah, it was stated that they could develop it, handle it themselves. The port can handle the project themselves, right?
Well, we don't necessarily have the expertise.
The lawyers you hired to handle the contract.
Right. The issue would be essentially you're paying for saving the time for our staff to look to get further contracts, whereas you have the project manager who's handling the overall project to make those contracts. Yes.
Earlier you stated that you could handle it in-house.
Well, if we need to, we can have the option. So I would say let's have the option. Let's put both in there and have the option to do either or. So we can decide to do it if we want, or we can allow the project manager. But to be pigeonholed one way or the other, that wouldn't allow the flexibility that we need as the project moves forward.
Let me ask Mr. Russo, would you be willing to, instead of amending to remove the entire 2.2 section, to stipulate that the following expenses are billed at a cost plus negotiated rate not to exceed 7.5%, where when the port cannot conduct these particular related expenses?
I'm open to that discussion. The cost plus factor always gives me some heartburn. I didn't know that the local governments could really go into a cost plus contract. And I know that federal regulations with FEMA money and all, it's prohibited. Now, I don't know if you've looked at the legal aspects of us going to a cost plus contract to be able to do that. And if you have, I'd like to know what the results were.
Well, our legal team has reviewed this multiple times. We have modified and negotiated this contract multiple times, over the last month. And at this point, when you look at the template that we built for the contracts and for the service agreement, it was based on contracts for multiple ports across the United States, mainly the ones on the lower Mississippi River. This is not something that we necessarily do every day. I understand this is the first time we've done one in maybe a decade or so, and so we wanted to look at templates from other ports. So this is pretty much standard, as a matter of fact. Now, you have some ports that have an engineering team, multiple engineers on staff, so they don't have to do the cost plus because they have the engineers who have the expertise and understand what is needed right then and there. So they don't need it. I don't want to say any names, but major ports that do this on a daily basis with a large staff. We are a staff of 40 individuals and only 10 in the office that would handle this from an administrative standpoint. So I think having the flexibility for us to be able to say we are going to handle it, or we trust the expertise of the project manager to handle it at a particular cost of 7.5%, I think that saves us some time and money so that we can move this project forward to the overall benefit of helping Venture Global have the acres that they need to develop their LNG facility.
In our discussion yesterday, you said that this consultant is going to do all the engineering work.
Well, the consultant is working with Matrix Consulting, which is handling the permitting side, and they're also working with the organization called Infinity Engineering. And so they are serving as the project manager for the overall project. I did have a conversation with some other commissioners as a concern of maybe long term, as we do more of these, we have a one-stop shop project manager. We had 3 major companies that bid for this project, and frankly, they were Burke Kleinpeter, GIS, and Intermat. So we went through a review. We had 3 of our staff members independently review each proposal, and at the end of the day, we had a consensus, and we based on our criteria, we scored them, and we felt that Intermat was the best choice based on our criteria that is in the RFP. If I can be frank, it was kind of like picking between a Mercedes, a BMW, and a Jaguar, so we all had great candidates, but at the end of the day, based on the criteria, we thought they were the best fit. But moving forward, as I talked to Commissioner Edgecombe about, if we can look at maybe having someone that could do it all-encompassing, that would be the top for our criteria, obviously we will look at that long term. As I said, we rarely do these types of RFPs, and so moving forward, I would love the input of all the commissioners as we have multiple RFPs moving forward as we develop the port.
So then that brings up the question, Infinity Engineering, who will design the project, is my understanding?
Infinity Engineering will be working with Intermat in the project, along with Matrix Consulting, which is handling the permitting process.
And so will those professional services be marked up 15% under the existing contract?
Only within the section that you're talking about, specifically to those sections 2.2, 1 through 4. So, for example, if there's equipment that needs to be leased for whatever reason or bought, then we either can decide to negotiate a contract with a particular vendor for that equipment. I'm just giving an example, which is, I believe, 2.2.4, or we can allow the project manager on behalf of the port to make that decision, and essentially we would be charging them to make that decision for us.
Correct. I understand
So it
that.
saves time and money for the staff.
So back to my original question, you went on to equipment, leases, and rentals.
I was just giving an example from that
I know,
section.
but I'm giving you an example of 2.2, which is the heartburn that I've had yesterday, and it's renewing now.
Sure.
Because of the professional services and engineering services that we are going to hire, are they going to mark their services up 15% under 2.22?
As I said before, we have negotiated to get it down between 5 and 10%, or we can say, no, we're not going to allow you to make that decision. We're going to go out and negotiate a contract ourselves with whatever particular expertise you additionally need. That way we don't have the markup. So our position is, let's have the flexibility to say, okay, Intermat, if we believe that you have the proper expertise and you're in the best position to make that decision for us, we're willing to let you do it to save us time and money and move the project forward. Or we can decide, no, the port is going to make that decision, and then that way we don't have the cost plus.
We're going to have to change the resolution if you want to do the amendment, Mr. Russo, as opposed to the actual exhibit. We have to have the resolution amended to reflect that it's contingent upon the removal of 2.2 from Exhibit B, if that's the route you want to take for the amendment. Or we could leave it as is and have them negotiate it down, or...
My wishes are that what we do here today is what they're going to do. And if we put 15%, then that's what it's going to be, 15%. You know, the history is that whatever we put on paper is what's going to rule. So if we're going to take my approach to this was a little off taken when first of all, I explained to you yesterday we had an ordinance, we have a policy. If the policy would have been followed, we wouldn't have this discussion today, because those proposals would have been sent to everybody here. We would have had an upfront look, and we would have known what you were asking for. And we wouldn't be delaying today. My concern, again, is that, we should have, in my opinion, on a capital improvement project, an RFQ for an engineering firm to be able to do a project without having to have a middleman or an overseer, because when you do the professional services, they can provide you rates for inspections and all of the project management that we need within that engineering group. But now what we've done is we've taken an engineering group and put it as a sub underneath a management group who's going to turn around and mark up their expenses 15%. And that's the issue that...
Only if it's necessary, sir. And then we have the option
Well, if it's
of doing
not
it ourselves.
necessary, then I'll leave my amendment out to take 2.2 out, and you can decide whether you want to have it marked up and paid for. Because
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Williams?
is this a time-sensitive issue?
It is a time-sensitive issue, as we've spoken to Venture Global, that is very much concerned that as we move forward in their development at B3, this port ship would be moved from B3 to Track H. We would hate to have to delay any further for our client as such. And so it's very much a time-sensitive issue. Forgive me, but I've only been here since May 1st, and my understanding that this was a discussion that happened in the fall of 2016. And so it's very much my concern that we should move this forward, because if we delay it any further, we could be adding 6 to 12 months additionally to move this process along. And I would hate to see that for our client.
Thank you.
And what do you base that 6 to 6 to 12 months delay on if we're talking about 2 weeks?
Well, if we're talking about, Mr. Chairman, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, we're not talking about that. What we're talking about is just deferring it and then amending this, not going out again for RFP. You know, that's not what the discussion is. The discussion is deferring it and having it amended correctly. But I will say this, and I will take some of the blame if so needed. But we did have a port committee meeting in June, in which this was on the agenda for members to discuss and see, and I was an open discussion about it. You know, whether or not the actual RFP was distributed, that's, you know, needs to be looked into if it needs to be. But I mean, we discussed it at the port committee meeting. But we're beyond that. I think the actual service agreement, the contract is correct. It's just this particular exhibit that was sent out. Well, I guess last Friday, to the members to review is what's bringing up the questions, and that's 2.2. I'm not sure if anybody else has any issues with that 2.2. I mean, we can move.
If I may,
you know, on the amendment, I think if you want to just, what we have to do is Ms. Stoops has an amendment to the resolution, so it's been seconded. So if you want to read the amended resolution.
You have it? It's amend resolution to make approval of contract contingent on section 2.02 of Exhibit B attached to the contract being removed before contract is executed.
All right, what line do you want to add that to? You want to put that as another whereas?
Yes.
All right,
No, I want to put it as a now therefore.
All right, put that as a now therefore.
Hereby amends the resolution to make the contract approval contingent upon section 2.2 of Exhibit B attached to the contract being removed from contract execution. It's amending the resolution saying that they can sign the contract providing they remove the 2.2 section from the contract, which is the markup discussion that we're having. And it just doesn't sit well with me that we're hiring professionals and then marking up their services. And I understand the professional part of it, but I also understand that, you know, if we would have done it in a different way, we wouldn't have had any middleman or any overseer. They would have been one and the same. Especially when we're talking about a project that's so small.
And that was a discussion that we had at the port committee meeting. Right. Mr. Edgecombe, I can remember having those discussions, and one of the questions was, can we do this in-house? And I think you answered the question with no, we could not do it in-house, that it required some extra expertise and more time. So that was discussed in that port committee meeting.
If you're talking about the one we had in Port Sulphur, Mr. Paul wasn't there. Mr. Sanders was there along with Christie, Chamberlain.
Yeah, and then we have it on the Belcher's Library as well to discuss that. Right.
So this has been presented at the port committee meeting, and also with the resolution, everyone received the service agreement, Exhibit A and Exhibit B, last month. And as I sent out to all the commissioners asking for any questions, comments, any way we can work it out, and we've tried to do that over the past month.
Right.
So.
And this is just a particular section, so Mr. Russo offered the amendment, Mr. Bartholomew seconded it. That amendment is on the table to be voted on. I'm open for discussion. I'll ask this question. Will that removal of 2.2 hamper or whatever you want to call it, you know, will it prohibit
it wouldn't prohibit the progress. We would just have to do it in-house. And so that would be the choice. But from our standpoint, we would just like to move forward with the contract in whole so that Intermat can begin the process.
And I've spoken to the council attorney who clarified the issue about the legality of a cost plus, and it is legal for the cost plus in this case.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Burt?
My position with this would be to allow them to have the flexibility to do either or. I just, whether it's time permitting for you guys to do it or at the time to allow a third party to do it, I think having the flexibility would just give more options as we progress. That's just my opinion.
I totally agree, and that's why I'd recommend to Mr. Russo if he could possibly change it to keep it in it and just amend that first line of the following expenses
Mr.
to go that it
Chairman?
costs plus. Ms.
Mr.
Sullivan?
Chairman, my position is, I think Mr. Russo bring up a lot of valid points, and in lieu of not doing it the proper way, going through the proper process and the proper channel in the beginning, as he just stated earlier, that we wouldn't even be having this discussion had we done it the proper way. So I think he brings a valid point, and if this is not an amendment that he just offered is not going to hamper the project, I don't see why we just can't go with the recommended amendment.
Just correct me if I'm wrong, if we were to amend this, would it be an additional 2 weeks before we move on with this project, or
No.
we going to vote today? Okay.
No. It would be done today.
I got you.
But the question that Mr. Burt brought up was, will you then still have the flexibility, or will you have to do it in-house? And that will that reduce from the $125,000 that's in the contract?
This is separate from, this is more of a additional possible work for the project manager to do. So if the project manager comes to us and says, well, we need additional equipment to leases or different options, and whether it's geotech surveys, et cetera, et cetera.
So that's outside the 125?
Right. So
All
that's
right,
part
well,
of.
I'm taking
it's
it out then, too.
Flexibility. It's about flexibility.
I understand that, but, like I said before at the Port Committee meeting, is that, I think $125,000, 10% of that project is more than adequate, and that's my limit on it. So taking this out, all it does is eliminate the possibility of going over 125.
Sure.
I'm actually for that, so.
Okay.
I'll,
Question.
any other questions?
Nobody have a question, I call for the question.
Mr. Dolly, call the question.
Everybody, let's everybody table.
This is
I
on
just
the,
wanted
this
to
is
make
on
sure
the
you did
amendment.
that, though.
Well,
I yield to the table.
I yield to Ms.
Okay.
Williams.
I understand it is going to be a reduction, but those services may very well be needed, and you're going to have to still pay additional costs, not to this entity, but to someone else if you need to rent equipment or things of that nature.
Well,
But what if you don't?
Well, then you wouldn't be charged for it if you didn't. If they didn't need to utilize it, then, it wouldn't be used.
Yeah. What I do say, I will say this, I do want that this contract to be capped out at 125. I don't think we need to be spending any more money on that because it isn't a big move. So all it is for the services. So these guys will be able to provide those. It wouldn't be through the contract. It would be separate. Mr. Russo?
yeah, I think that we're getting confused here, or we twisting things here. We're paying someone $400, wait, let me see what the amount is. $250 an hour, $235 an hour, and $110 an hour to provide a service. On top of that, we are going to pay them 15% on anything that they engage in under 2.2 section.
Right.
I believe that under the hourly cap, if you want to hire Infinity Engineering, or you've already made an agreement with them, they can easily provide you with a scope of services for Infinity Engineering or anybody else that you want, and bill by the hour and still come out better than the 15%. As far as the equipment and all, I mean, I think that if you're going to rent a piece of equipment, you're going to rent a piece of equipment. Drag line, barge. Mr. Burt's company uses that all the time. He's familiar with that. So, I mean, we marking everything up is my issue. I don't want to hold up the contract. I just want it to be clear that we're not hiring a professional to watch a professional to hire another professional. And that's where we're at right now, because we're going to have to hire a contractor. We're going to have to hire an engineering firm. And that $125,000 should be more than adequate to do the project as far as all of those services for engineering and design and monitoring. This reflects a $1.2 million project. Is that the estimate to move them?
That's the estimate.
Then one engineering firm could have easily handled all of this without having any additional markups, because the curve for the state is 10 to 12%.
All right, with that said, I'm in agreement on the amendment. We need to get it done for the 125 that we paying the consultant and move them. I call a question on the vote for the amendment.
On the amendment, right?
This is on the amendment. Any amendment passes 9-0. We'll now move back to the original resolution, which I'll offer as amended.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Bartholomew. Any questions or comments from the table, from the audience? Mr.
Warren Lawrence, 120 Timber Canal Lane, Meadow Grove. The one question I have is, in this resolution, is this the port ship services will be moving to another facility that's owned by the port?
Yeah, it's going to be approximately, what, a quarter of a mile south?
Okay.
Yeah.
And they will be a tenant of the port?
I'm sorry?
We'll be swapping title.
Yeah, just title swap.
Okay.
Land swap, yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from the audience? All right, with none, this is the vote on the resolution, which is 6C, as amended. The resolution passes 9-0. All right, thank you guys for your time on that issue. 6D.
A resolution authorizing Maynard Sandy Sanders as Executive Director of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District to extend the agreement with Arlington Ridge Group LLC for consulting and advisory services regarding inter alia government representation at the state and federal level and otherwise provide with respect thereto.
I'll offer with changes. Yeah, you can read the change. I'll give a second. Got it. Mr. Bartholomew, seconds.
Okay, the changes are adding lines 21 and 22 that read, whereas it is the wishes of this council that this contract run concurrently with the term of the Port Committee members. Line 29, it reads, original agreement with Arlington Ridge Group LLC, and then removing for the period of 1 year. Continue reading, beginning August 15, 2017, and ending, removing the date August 15, 2018, and replacing it with December 31, 2017. Continue reading, not to exceed a retainer of $2,500 per month, and removing the words or $30,000 per year per the original agreement.
All right, thank you. So basically with this, I'll talk about the original resolution, which is just extending the agreement with Arlington Ridge Group, which is our consultant in D.C., who actually helps us on the state and federal level. Their contract was up on August the 15th. What the amendment does, it extends that to December 31st of 2017, so it gets that through the rest of the year. And then what it also does, it makes the contract up at the end of every year, so it's concurrent with when we change over, whether it be leadership or members of the committee or members of the council. That way, the new council, the new committee, the first thing they'll have is the renewal of the contract instead of having it mid-year. Didn't make a lot of sense. So we'll just, so those are the two different amendments. But this extends Arlington Ridge's contract. You guys have a copy of that? Extended through December 31st at a max of $2,500 a month. Yeah, John, second. Do we have any questions from the table? Mr. President?
I see the zeal of several council members for the port, and I applaud that zeal in an effort to try to create and build a port. And I simply would request that this Plaquemines Parish government, which does exist, I would request the same zeal for advising and consulting services. Thank you.
Well, that has been noted, and one of the other reasons why we're doing this is we're looking into having the port and the parish work together to have one consultant, which we've had discussions with a few different firms. This firm we're going to keep until the end of the year, but I know Mr. Burt and Mr. Roussel have discussed I'm not sure who has the legislation about the other. I think you both do? Yeah, I think it's a joint legislation. So, yeah, to answer your question, I do believe that is going to be coming up in the council meeting, but, you know, we wanted to extend this contract because they are working on a bunch of items for the port that we didn't want to just stop midstream, get them through the rest of the year. But to answer your question, we're definitely on board with that, Mr. President.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions, comments from you?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment that I think this is the beginning of a new day. I appreciate the comments. Councilman Black.
No problem.
Appreciate that very much.
Any comments from the audience? All right, with none, we will vote on 6D. All right, somebody's going to West Metairie. All right, 9-0 passes. All right, we will move to item 7A. We have no introductions or resolutions wherein suspension is being sought. Ms. Marcotte, 7B, please.
Discussion of the air quality in Dalcour area by Mr. David Morgan. Councilmember Bartholomew.
Yes, Mr. Morgan is present, so would you come up, Mr. Morgan? While Mr. Morgan making way, I want to thank the following people for their efforts. Our state representative on the West Bank, Mr. Leopold, and our senator on the East Bank, Ms. Hewitt, who has been very instrumental and involved with the State Department getting the DEQ on board and to try to get together and try to find a definitive answer by assessing the quality of the air along the Mississippi, and also the port for their efforts as well as the administration with their efforts. So I just want to accolade that, thank them very much for the aggressiveness that they have and the stance that they have taken. Mr. Morgan?
Hi, my name is David Morgan. I live at 5511 Highway 39 in Delcourt, Louisiana. The areas that are affected are Delcourt, Promised Land to Bertramville. There's 14 residents in a straight row within a mile and a half that all suffer respiratory problems. The problems go from a cough where you'd have something in your throat. There's 2 council members that y'all are sitting with that have this. It is a cough that will not go away. You go to the doctor, they have no clue what the problem is. Out of the 14 residents, 5 have been hospitalized. 4 were in ICU over 7 days. My wife was 15. The doctors are at a total baffle. When I called the port to ask them what was being discharged in the ships in the front yard, they would only give me 3 months where I requested a year. I found out that TALC, T-A-L-C, was one of the projects that was being discharged, which is known for talc pneumonia, which is also the #1 cause of ovarian cancer in women and children. It's been taken off the market. Johnson & Johnson and major makeup line have lost millions, well, almost $1 billion in lawsuits because of talc. But I don't know if talc is our problem, even though my wife's chest x-rays and x-rays that we came under on the talc website were exactly the same. You got to think we have the Chevron plant directly across the river. They are emitting air out of their steam that might mix with this talc. We also are offloading pig iron or a fine mist metal that will mix with this talc because they do 2 ships at a time. So we have a blend going on here that we have no clue what it's doing to the residents. But you get 14 residents in a straight row where everyone is affected. We have a major problem. The reason I'm here today is I want this council to put a news release through the Plaquemines Gazette or the newspaper on a health alert. If you've been to the doctor, you have a symptoms where you can't quit coughing and you can't swallow, that's one of the main things. Your body builds up a mucus, the mucus goes into the lung, and you have pneumonia. There's 7 confirmed cases out of 14. The youngest victim is 3. Our oldest victim, I think, is Miss Adams. And it's not going away. The doctors cannot figure out what the problem is. Right now, the DEQ is involved, the EPA is involved, and the National Hospital Association is requiring that people call our health department, file a complaint, then it's referred to the Louisiana Department of Health, which will get your medical records, and in the medical records, it'll go to the national website, and I'm hoping that because it's pulmonary, it's going to end up in Milwaukee, South Carolina, Virginia, because of all the steel mills and the coal mines and everything else. They have the leading pulmonary doctors in the United States. But until we get an accurate account and we can figure out exactly what's causing this, or a blend of what's causing this, the people at Plaquemines Parish are at a very high risk. So I want you to look around this room, because you hear people out here coughing right now, they may be affected. It's not contagious. You cannot pass this from person to person, even though it was given to the infection control of the United States government came involved. But this is where we're standing. So I'm pleading to the council to make the health advisory to our parish, and let's get a count to see how many people this is. I did go to Gondrella Drive. I found 4 people affected. I went to Cedar Drive. I found 3 people affected. River Oaks Drive, 4 people affected. That was who I talked to. I didn't talk to everybody. These are people I know. At one time, 20 years ago, I could have walked to every house and knew everybody in those residents, but Plaquemines Parish has grown. But this is where we stand. Now, Plaquemines Parish Port, this is my little pet peeve. The bid stream in Plaquemines Parish is controlled by Plaquemines Parish Port Authority. Correct? Wrong answer. Plaquemines Parish gave up the right to those buoys and called it a port. Now the Coast Guard has full jurisdiction. Our parish can't offload that there. It has to go through the Coast Guard. Next thing, a ship comes into the waters of Plaquemines Parish in the river. They discharge their cargo and they go to clean the holes of the ship. Well, my finding out that whatever chemicals on that ship, because it's like a embassy, they can use any chemical aboard. They do not have to go to United States standards. So if it's a high cancer causer, if it can kill you on a sniff, they can use it. Ricky Saxon, the Becknells, a couple weeks ago, a ship was in the river, and they cleaned the ship with muriatic acid, knocked down 5 or 6 people. Fire department was sent, sheriff's office sent, EMS sent, and then the Port Authority went out, and that's what they were using. They were using muriatic acid. The people on the bank had no clue. This is what we're looking at. Okay? This is in our parish, and we have no say-so. But until we, the people, stand up and start putting our foot down, the previous board administration told me that they had a ship one time in New Orleans discharging a highly explosive. They brought it right there to the Belle Chase Ferry and started discharging without permission. Our port then had it moved down to months ago, a non-populated area. Okay, so this is what we're looking at. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. I'm just telling you what I know, what I've found out. So I thank you very much for your time, and I hope that you'll try to help us out here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of maybe help educate us. Thank you, David. Donald, do you have, is that in your lane as far as when the port goes out to investigate those types of incidents? And kind of what is the port's authority? Can you kind of clarify that for us?
If we get a specific complaint of a, if we get a complaint, the port responds. Like in the issue mentioned down in Becknellville, there's some vapors coming off that ship. The port responded. The gentleman called the port directly. We sent a boat en route. I sent a supervisor en route by vehicle. Was there within minutes. At the end of the day, there was 2 people that refused treatment. They were checked out and refused treatment. Nobody went down. It was muriatic acid they were cleaning the ship with. It's not allowed in that anchorage to do so, they can do some type of cleanings. What happened with that particular incident, there was some leftover cargo in the ship that mixed with the muriatic acid and caused that incident. The port ceased and desist that operation. Again, fire department, everybody responded, including Coast Guard. We had
Now, does the port have the authority to impose a fine or anything, or is that another entity?
That goes a little further up the chain, but we ultimately can cease and desist any incident on the river with probable cause.
Okay.
Would a report go out, investigate, and find something? That's what happened in that incident. In this case we're dealing with, we're all looking for resolve of what the issue is with East Bank residents, but without a specific incident to say that it's this ship, this anchorage, this location to respond to and do a report and generate a report. Coast Guard will get involved as well, and DEQ, and that's what happened here since the official complaint was made with the coughing issue and the respiratory problems.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to get some clarity for everybody to understand the process.
But we do have certain limitations and controls to stop and cease and desist on issues. Now, we've had issues of noise. Somebody complained about noise.
Right.
You can't stop a facility or an operation on just particular noise unless it's extended, and we work with our customers and shareholders on a regular basis when we receive those type of complaints.
All right, thank you.
Well, the thing with this, he's talking about the noise. Well, when a ship comes into that anchorage, he offloads 24 hours around the clock. They shut down at 7 to 8. Morning and night, grease the crane, go back. I know, I worked in this line of business. I know what they do. And the complaint that they were having, they were unloading an iron ore, and they weren't soft loading. In other words, they weren't taking the bucket over the barge, lowering it all the way down to the barge, and discharge it, which gives you a little swoosh. But they were dropping it from 50 to 60 feet in an empty bottom barge, and it sounds like a drum. And when you're on the river and you take water, you magnify that sound about 10%. And that was why all the people in the East Bank were complaining, and it was a valid complaint. And then they have PA systems. When they get close to the bottom of the ship, they'll take a heavy piece of equipment, lower it into the ship, and they talk to the operators on a PA system. Well, they weren't using proper language, or they were, but it wasn't what you would speak to a child. And that's what we were listening to all the time, and they finally stopped that, which was good too. But the offloading of these ships in our area, for me, I'm finding that it might be a talc ship and a heavy metals, or it might be phosphate, might be urethra. There's so many different products that they're offloading out there. It may not be one product. And the problem we're going to have with the EPA and everybody else, I know it's already there, is what two ships don't mix. And that's our problem. We don't. When we went back and we did the research on the cargoes, we went to the MSDS sheets for the put out by the federal government, which tells you what the aspects of the raw material is. And that's the one we found out what talc was. Then the phosphate was another, and then the pig iron. My brother is a hazmat person. He owns Sims Hazmat. And we found out that heavy metals with the dust will cause a fine powder that goes into your lung, and your lung builds up a mucus, and you cough. And when you cough, it irritates your larynx. Your larynx causes a mucus, and then you get pneumonia. That's another one. So everything that they're discharging in our front yard is a pneumonia causer. But mine was the talc. Talc is also pneumonia and also cancer. The fine metals your body doesn't get rid of up to a year. So that cough you just did might last a year consecutively. I mean, you know, you're laughing, but it's true. And my wife's been dealing with this for almost a year and a half. She almost died. And I ended up firing one set of doctors and bringing in another before they got the right treatment. There is no proper treatment for this. We found this out. It's just they have to put a Band-Aid on it until your body cures, if it cures. So I thank you very much.
All right, I appreciate it.
Excuse me, David. You said also on the West Bank as well, right?
Oh, yeah. It's on both sides of the river.
East and west, right?
It's on both sides of the river. If they would go door to door right now and start asking. Jonathan Camden, that works
I just wanted
for
to
me.
make that clear.
Yeah.
That
He lives on Cedar Grove, and he's been hospitalized twice with sinus infections. So this is all part of this. It's on both sides of the river. All right.
All right, thank you. Any other comments from the table?
One thing I would have is,
Mr. Edgecombe?
what would the Coast Guard play a role in this?
Sir?
The Coast Guard? What, they play a role?
The Coast Guard advised us.
Come to the mic, Mr. Morgan. So, yeah.
The Coast Guard gave us to the National Response Team. And the Coast Guard only has jurisdiction on the water. They don't have any jurisdiction off of airborne pathogens. Okay? If it hits the air, that's not their responsibility. But if it hits the water, then that's where it goes to. And so the National Response Team that we called, we were cut an item number where they made a report on it. And then it was given to 27 federal agencies. So far, we've heard from 5. So this is ongoing. You know, we're going to find out a lot from this. They're also going to come and do soil analysis because, you know, Stokehaven dropped all that shit on us. And so they're going to come do that to see if that's not part of it, too. You know? But, you know, when you look at our area, the Mississippi River is the biggest sewage plant in the world. Everything up north comes through here. And, you know, I hate to say it, but we get a letter, you know, a couple times a year saying our drinking water wasn't fit to drink. We get it in July, or it wasn't fit to drink in January. You know, we're 7 months away when they're advising us that we shouldn't have drank the water in January. But it's always too late, and that's one of my things right now. I'm trying to get ahead of the ball here. And by doing this, then we will know how many people really are affected in Plaquemines Parish. One of the people that I did find was infected was in Buras. He lives in Buras, but he works in Belchase. But he's affected also. So it's just, you know, a lot of parish residents are going to be affected by this. I had 3 complaints off of Woodland Highway, which is a long way away from me. And everybody's been to the doctor. Everybody's been through the same swallow test. Everybody's had the tube run down their nose. Everybody's been treated in different ways. Some of it works, some of it doesn't. But the only thing it seems from everything we found is heavy steroids. My wife was on 1,000 milligrams a day for 3 days, which should have killed her. But it pulled her through.
All right, Mr. Morgan, I appreciate it. Any other questions from the council, administration? Any from the audience?
I would just like Raymond to come up, our health supervisor, and kind of, are we going to put a public message out?
All right, Mr. Raymond Ferrer.
If I may, Councilwoman Williams, I don't think we have jurisdiction. I think the port would have jurisdiction on this matter. But we'd be more than glad to do so if the port's willing to follow, you know.
What's the question?
My question is, are we going to put a message out to the residents of Plaquemines Parish about what is going on?
Is the government of
So
the port?
are you saying that the port is part of the Plaquemines Parish government?
I'm asking.
Because if it is, I'd love
Look,
to.
I'm worried about the welfare of
Me
residents
too
of the
as
parish,
well.
whether or
I
not,
am too. That was
you
my
know,
point of the question.
who cares who puts it out? The question is do we need to get something out? And
Yes.
does the administration, through the health department, want to do it? Or does the port want to be the leaders here and do it? Mr. Matthews?
Yeah, it is a health issue, and I want to say to Mr. Morgan, I want to thank him for his leadership in the community, trying to reach out to all the agencies to find out what's going on. He reached out to us initially, and we spoke to a customer in the area, vessel and their types of cargo. We also reached out to the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard regulates, frankly, all the cargo that comes up and down the Mississippi River and the waterways of the United States. So any hazardous materials that they would have concerns about, they will see it first before it comes into the port of entry in Plaquemines. Now, this is a health concern, so this went to Louisiana DEQ and the PPG Health Department. So for us, we're just here to help in any way we can to provide information so that we can really eliminate options of what the possible cause is. But I would say that this is PPG Health Department and LDEQ, which would be the quarterbacks on this, and we're just here to help in any way we can with providing information.
Let me, Mr. President.
Yes, if I may. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I spoke with Commander Bigby when this incident first occurred, and we were in discussions. We both agreed that DEQ had to be notified. They were notified. Commander Bigby, and Mr. Morgan raises a good point. Commander Bigby seemed to think that it wasn't Coast Guard jurisdiction, it was port jurisdiction, and so that's why I was just repeating what Commander Bigby of the United States Coast Guard said. So, but with the tariffs that we received from the river, I think that this would be a great thing to do. We need to put out a public health notice with some of the money we received from the shipping.
All right, so do you want to do it as the president, or you want us to do it as the port?
We'd be more than glad to do it. Just appropriate the money for us to do it, because we are one government, in my opinion.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Hold on, Mr. Russo had one first. Mr. I'm sorry.
Yep. Everybody seems to think that we have a problem, but nobody's identified the problem. So what is the letter going to say?
Correct. It's going to give you the symptoms, so you'll get the response from the people, so you can put it into the database, so you can get all the doctors in the United States looking at it.
So what you
sit back and say, we got a problem.
Mr. Morgan, just hold on.
Yeah, hold on one second.
I'm trying to get this to where we're going with what we're doing. And so you really want to do a survey to see how many people are affected. So it's not a letter saying that we got a health problem. We're looking to see and identify the problem.
What we've got to do is we've got to build a database with the people that are affected, and we've got to get the DEQ and the ETA and everybody else may never know what this is, because it may only be when two ships show up. But if you put it before,
Mr. Morgan, come by the mic, please.
But if you put it before, if you get everybody's health records that are affected as of today, and they go back and you get 200 doctors looking at it instead of your doctor and your doctor and your doctor, and nobody's on the same page, there's no way for them to identify the problem. We've got to, right now, we've got to find out how many people are affected, how many people went to the doctor, and that's the ones I really want to respond to, the ones that went to the doctor for this. Everybody that I've talked to has been to several doctors. They've been to urgent care, Ochsner's, Children's Hospital, East Jeff, West Jeff. I mean, every hospital in the area has seen people. Miss Adams' mother went to East Jeff, wasn't it? Yeah, she started off at East Jeff. She went to Ochsner's West Bank Clinic, and then she ended up with Jan's pulmonary doctor, because that's where I sent her. So this doctor now has two cases exactly the same, where she's got the pulmonary specialist for Ochsner's, all of them looking at it now. But what I'm trying to do is get everybody's information in so they can look at all the medical records, and you get a whole bunch of people looking at it better than one set of eyes. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Okay. Mr. Burt?
I just have a question, Mr. Morgan. First of all, thank you for being here today. And outside of reading this on social media a couple of days ago, I didn't know any of this stuff was going on. My second question is the muriatic acid release in Jesuit Bend. That's in my district, and I knew nothing about that. I mean, to me, that should have been a press release immediately to notify the residents of what was going on. So I don't know who has jurisdiction over that, but I kind of take offense to that as a leader of that district.
Mr. Durr?
Mr. Burke, I apologize. It was a short-lived deal where it happened over a 5 or 10 minute deal. The response was very fast, including Coast Guard showed up because they were in the area. Fire department, the cease and desist went in right away. The vapor cloud already came and went. There was 2 employees at Mr. Becknell's farm that had a brief breathing issue. They were checked out and refused treatment. It was over. I do apologize that they didn't get pushed to you, but all the reports were done through 911, and all the parish agencies responded to it. I will take responsibility for not, as a port employee, forwarding that information to you.
All right. Mr. Frey, give me 1 second. Let me get the commander up here real quick. I see your...
Hey, good morning, or good afternoon. Commander Jamie Bigby, I spoke with the parish president. I just wanted to clarify, we did speak. I'm not sure what the authority of the port is for it, but the DEQ, I thought, was probably the first touch point regarding air quality. We do inspections on the ship. We inspect them for navigation safety and safety of the vessel for the type of cargo they're going to take. And so for this break bulk type cargo is basically an open box. There is no air recovery requirements. Certain liquid cargoes do require vapor recovery. Those are set by the state. Our involvement would be just ensuring that whatever vapor recovery techniques they use is an approved system, and that's about it. So unfortunately, you're right. Once it becomes an air quality issue, our jurisdiction ends. So, happy to answer any questions if there's any questions regarding Coast Guard Authority or what we can do. Port safety, we can shut down parts of the river if there is an air release. When we get notified, we're one of those agencies that gets notified on an air release. Our jurisdiction is basically bank to bank or over the river. So if there's vessels coming into a plume or a cloud of hazardous material, we can stop the ships from coming in, and then we would work with our port partners to make sure that the communities or the folks that have the authority to go into those communities and make those notifications were notified as well.
All right, Commander, I appreciate it. Any questions for Commander?
One question. Have you had any occasions to notify DEQ in the last 6 months?
I would have to defer to our incident management division. So I do a prevention. I do the inspection on the ships. Whenever there's a release, our incident management division would get notified. I do remember the muriatic acid one. Short of that one, I don't recall any others. But I don't know off the top of my head, besides that one.
Would you mind checking the records and providing them to our health department and our port?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. President, I think Mr. Ferrer, you allow him to speak, or?
Yes,
Raymond?
and Commander Bigby, thank you for your present. Thank you, Commander Bigby, for your present, and thank you for your cooperation in keeping us informed. Yes.
Good afternoon. Ray Ferrer with the Plaquemines Health Department. So, like Mr. Morgan said, since August 4th, he came into our health department and talked about the health issues that his wife and the rest of the community has been having. Since then, we've had a total of 8 people called in, 6 people from the East Bank and 2 from the West Bank, 1 person from Woodland Highway, and there was another person who lives in Jefferson but works off of Engineers Road. Symptoms are similar to what Mr. Morgan had described, sinus issues, dry cough, pneumonia, throat swelling. We've been in touch with DEQ. They have actually boots on the ground as we speak. They do plan on doing some air monitoring, especially for the on-land facilities on both the East Bank and the West Bank, and that could be as early as tomorrow. It'll be an 8-hour surveillance. They want to do a day 2 8-hour surveillance sometime next week, and a day 3 8-hour surveillance, but that's all pending weather and this Hurricane Harvey. So I've been actually sharing this call log with our partner at the State Health Department. They certainly want to streamline all phone calls that we get. So if we're going to certainly put out a message, I think it should be a joint message between us, DEQ, and DHH.
Okay. And when you say you mean PPG, right?
Yes.
The health department. Okay, so my other question is, so no source has been identified. Is that correct?
That'd be correct.
So therefore, we don't know if it's the port's jurisdiction, if it's a parish health department issue. So in your opinion, the parish health department not having an idea of the source should be the lead?
Well, I think it's important to at least
Local
wait for
lead.
DEQ.
The local lead.
Locally, yes.
Okay. Mr. President?
Yeah, I have, the issue is, if there is a concern, it's everyone's concern. It's just not just whether the port or the health department, but it has been identified. All agencies need to get together, and work together, develop the concern, and take the steps that it needs to take to find out exactly what's going on, if we can even do that. But once we have joined the efforts and everybody's involved in the process, then something will come out of it. But we can't isolate one from the other. We have to be a united effort on those concerns, those issues. Those are very serious issues.
No, and I totally agree, Mr. Bartholomew, and that's what I'm getting to, is my point is, we do need to have a unified, consolidated effort, but I do think we need to identify a local lead, and I think Raymond has the expertise, and I think it is the health department's lane to operate in. and to coordinate that and to quarterback it with DEQ, the port, the Coast Guard, other entities from the local notification standpoint, et cetera. So that's my point. I know, I'll get to you in 1 second, Mr. Lapine had a...
Mr. Morgan, thank you for a great presentation. I talked to you before the meeting and you expressed your concerns. Now, Raymond, right now the DEQ will do some testing, right? I think with Mr. coming up.
It would be air monitoring.
Okay.
yes.
It's going to be in my front yard tomorrow morning.
Okay. When those findings are done, I would implore you to come back and please tell us what you have found, what they have found, what you recommend, which way we go as in interpretation to the public, or and again, I do agree with a good press release to say, hey, if you suffered from symptoms, let's try to create a database. But I implore you to come back and let us know, good, bad, ugly, whatever you find, so we can make a determination for which front we go from there.
Certainly, if or when the results come in, it may take a few days for DEQ to interpret those results and for them to discuss that with the State Health Department. Certainly, the State Health Department has the expertise in matching symptoms versus what the exposure is.
But, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot,
Sure.
but sometimes there's a disconnect between us and the administration. But let everyone know, okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Salvant.
Yes, my comments are along the lines of what Mr. Birch said earlier. My concern right now is when the port became knowledgeable of this information, because myself and my two colleagues that sat to the left of me that happens to be port committee members didn't have any knowledge of this. And this, as Mr. Bartholomew said earlier, this don't necessarily means that this is just involved the Delco area. We don't know. We don't know what areas are involved. So my thing is, what is protocol? Shouldn't the port committee or the commissioners should have been at least informed? Then maybe I just came out of a town hall meeting. I could have at least had a topic of discussion as a part of my agenda. So, I'm just trying to find out what's the protocol. And we still need to stop, as I keep saying, this analogy I keep using. We got to stop operating as a crippled dog, just getting to the other side. Every issue, we just work our way through it. There has to be some type of protocol. The moment something happens, you just move along. But that's my comment.
Mr. President.
Did you waiting a response?
Can I say something?
Okay.
Mr. President.
Okay. Councilman Lapine and Mr. Chairman, thank you. I think the testimony, I want to thank Mr. Morgan for his factual testimony today, but the factual testimony was clear. This was from river and terminal district and port activities. And the reason why I'm glad to see, I'm glad to hear about this, because you're right, we are one parish, and it's my interpretation of our charter from day one, we're one government and not this separate entities. But, and Councilman Lapine, we've disagreed on that point. But I think it's crucial that while we certainly will share, my administration will share any news that comes from DEQ, which is a state entity, the only factual testimony we have here today, thanks to Mr. Morgan, is that this is generated from port and ship activity. So that's something where we really want the best. My administration, being with the shortage of manpower, isn't, and also we truly do not have jurisdiction over that area. Properly speaking, it would be the port's jurisdiction. So I'm not fighting for turf. This isn't a turf war. I'm willingly ceding because I do think this is one area where the port should take the lead.
All right, so let me just be clear then. Are you relieving Mr. Raymond Ferrer from leadership in this incident? and asking the port to
No, I'm
delete?
requesting that the port collaborate with DEQ and that they be the proper, since they have a better manpower position than we do as government, and they provide the information and collaborate with DEQ. Since this is the testimony is clear, this is a port incident, a related incident on the water. I mean, we'll share, Mr. Raymond Ferrer, I'll say this, we'll share whatever comes our way, but I'm simply asking that the port take the lead because this is within their jurisdiction pursuant to the testimony that we've heard today.
I don't agree with you, Mr. President, but if you want the port to take the lead, I have no problem asking this council to approve the port doing so.
Thank you.
If I think we have the capacity to do it.
Well, our expertise is not necessarily health issues. However,
I understand, but you know what? It's leadership.
Sure.
So if
We're
President
willing to
wants us
work however
lead,
we can. Absolutely.
We'll lead. Okay?
Absolutely. And if I could clarify, we did send an email to all the commissioners on August 22nd with a timeline of how the port has helped in working with the Public Health Department on this particular health concern.
And I do
the
remember
other
that email.
agencies.
So there were two different incidents.
Okay.
So I think the port was notified properly about Mr. Morgan's incident. The other incident was Saxon Becknell incident, which was not notified. So I think it was two separate incidents. But that particular incident that Mr. Morgan's talking about, yes, you're correct. In August, that email was sent to all the port members. The incident, Ms. Salmont and I think Mr. Burt was talking about is the one with Saxon Becknell.
Right. And in reference to the Saxon Becknell one, we will, from now on, make sure that any incident like that happens
maybe we
again,
come
we'll
up-
forward to all the commissioners.
And maybe we can come up with a policy based on the wishes of the council. What's the threshold for notification?
Sure,
You
absolutely.
know?
But any way we can help in this current health issue, we're more than
If
willing
it
to help.
affects a resident, maybe that's the threshold. Mr. Juneau?
Yes, I have to say something. I've been living by the river for 47 years, right in the middle of Belsham. And in the past 5-10 years, we have more boats, we have more ships passing through, and more mooring in the river. And I do come out of my house sometimes, and my kids used to smell it. I smell things. I don't know what's going on. About 5 months ago, I got sick, and I was sick for 2 weeks. And the doctors worked with me for sinus and different things, and who knows? It could have been the same thing. I don't know, but I know there's many, many ships that park along the river, and we don't know what they do at night. We don't know what they do because I find things in my yard that when they clean out their filters and all, they blow it out. They release water into the river. They do a lot of things, and who knows? We all got to get together and work together, and I feel like as a council, and you as a health man, and with the port, we all got to work together. We can't just say, well, you can take it over, you can take it over. I think everybody has got to put their hands in the pot and work together.
And I would also refer back to Commissioner Roussel's point that we do not know the source. Make that clear, but we're, as I said before, the port is willing to help and provide information to help find out if we can eliminate these, what potential options they would be of the source. So we're more than willing to help in any way we can with PPG Health Department, LDEQ, and other agencies, including U.S. Coast Guard, as we've done already.
And Mr. Matthews, if it would be possible, because I, like Councilman Burt, had no knowledge of the acid leak. So if I could be included, if the parish president's administration could be included on those emails, I'd
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Noted. Yeah, absolutely.
What I will do is, Reverend, before I comment, I'll let you come up.
Yeah, Mr. Comey, I am totally disappointed in you today being our parish president. For you to make this a political issue, it is very saddening to me. I had a lot of hope in you, but I've lost a lot of hope in you by that statement you made. This is not about Port Authority, it's about the welfare of our community. You should be about that and not talking about whether it's Port Authority or not, because you have a responsibility as the leader of this parish to take care of all of our needs. And I don't think this is an issue to be playing politics around. And everything, your statement, and I'm glad to see Raymond here, so I know he's under your jurisdiction, but to hear you make your statement today, it's very disheartening to me, and I know to so many other people listening to it. This is not a political issue. You got people could really be dying from this issue. The issue to me is how you get involved with, whether you have a good relationship with Mr. Burke, whether you have a good relationship. I don't care about that. You got to put all that on the side and say, look, we want to be a part of this, whether y'all want us to be a part of that. Not if this and not if this. This is not no game. This is not time to play politics. People are sick, and it could be dying as a result of this. So I hope you really change your state of mind. I mean, there's some people question the president of the United States of mind. Well, I'm questioning your state of mind right now based on how your position on it. This is not the time to play game, Mr. Cormier. This is not the time.
And if I may, Reverend Edwards, just those comments. Number one, as I stated, I had no knowledge of the acid leak on the river. None. I'm not included in any emails that regard the port. I've been cut out of all those. I don't know how much money they spend. I don't know anything. I get nothing. So I don't want to set a precedent that for something that I'm not kept in a loop on. That's number one. Number two, we heard the testimony of Mr. Morgan, and this is the only factual testimony we have today was that this occurred on the river. Now, as Mr. Ferrer noted, and as I stated, and as Commander Bigby stated, we were on this. I was notified about the second issue, and I was not notified about the acid, but Commander Bigby did call me, and I thank him for calling, about this second issue. And I was concerned, and he was concerned, and that's why we got Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality on this issue, because they have the manpower and the resources to get to the bottom of this. And so that is the most important thing. And I felt relieved once DEQ assigned an agent to come down here and conduct an investigation, because really that's what we're all after. We just want the truth. We just want the truth. Now, I did tell Mr. Ferrer to keep notes, keep updates on all these matters, and we will be collaborating. But I don't want to set a precedent where, for example, there's another acid leak, and Mr. Ferrer isn't notified because I'm not being notified. And Mr. Ferrer, were you notified about the acid leak on the river? Would you please come to the microphone and answer?
No, I was not aware of the acid leak.
Okay, and that's my point, Reverend Edwards, is that we're not kept in the loop, and so I don't want to set a precedent.
Ms. Williams is calling for a point of order, sir. We're on item D, which is about Mr. Morgan. I'm going to go ahead and close this discussion out, and we're going to close out 7B, and we're going to move. Hold on one second, Mr. Lawrence. We're going to open it back up, but I want to move to another item. I want to offer a suspension of the rules on a resolution.
I'll second. I guess we have a second.
It's a resolution authorizing and directing the Port Harbor and Terminal District to take the lead on investigating, coordinating with state and federal officials, and then notifying, if applicable, Plaquemines residents of potential health issues and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Have a second?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Williams seconds. Do I have any public comment on the suspension of the rules?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Would you please include that the administration be informed of these matters as well?
I will in the whereases later on. This is what's happening, Mr. Morgan. The President has asked to be relieved of the lead for this particular incident. This council, I'm suspending the rules to do a resolution to have the Port Harbor and Terminal District take the lead on this. No, we are. Let us take the lead first. Okay. Since this was not, I was just informed, the public comment is on whether or not the public has an issue with adding this to the suspension. Any comments on that only? On whether or not it can be suspended or should be suspended. All right, with none, we have a second from Ms. Williams.
Mr. Chairman, I
Ma'am.
just wanted to go on record as saying this. I'm not being involved. I'm not participating in this vote. I'm not being involved in this shenanigan.
She can abstain on our vote. Okay, just to be clear, that in order for this resolution to be suspended, or for the suspension, I'm going to need a unanimous vote. So,
You don't have to vote on it. You can vote for the suspension.
so basically, we're voting on the suspension, not the actual resolution. This is for the suspension, which needs unanimous vote to then go to the vote for the resolution. Open the board for the suspension. And the suspension is granted 9-0. Now we're going to move to the vote on the actual resolution. A resolution authorizing and directing the Port Harbor and Terminal District to take the lead on investigating, coordinating with state and local officials, local, state, and federal officials, and then notifying parish residents, if applicable, of potential health issues and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. I offer, second by Mr. Edgecombe. Do we have any comments from the table?
Again, my position is I will not be participating in this vote.
And,
Go ahead, Mr. President.
and I'd like to object to the language, take the lead. The only testimony we've heard today is that this was a port issue on the river. So it's just everybody doing their job and staying in their lane, which is one thing I don't have a problem doing.
Sir?
Warren Lawrence. Yeah, my comment is similar to what he just brought up. We are assuming and making the assumption from what we've heard that it's absolutely positively all the effect of this has taken place on port property.
Right. So
you don't know if it's been something from a rail train.
That is exactly the point, Mr.
That's-
Lawrence.
it-
That is all an assumption. I applaud Mr. Morgan's investigation. He's been a policeman for a long time, and I don't doubt his investigative skills. But what I will say, it is an assumption. We do not know exactly where this came from. That's why we would like the parish government
And I agree.
to take the lead from the health department, and then if it's notified that it is an issue with the port, then the port will get involved, but the port was going to cooperate totally the whole way through. The president, opposite of the direction of the health department, didn't want to do the lead on it. So therefore, this council is going to vote whether or not that the port should take the lead on this, and then determine where it came from.
Well, and my only
Somebody's got to
comment-
take the lead on it.
Yeah, my comment
We're willing
too
to.
is that the president is responsible to take the lead. If he doesn't take the lead, there should be a mandamus set upon that president that the council goes in and have the judge put somebody
right.
else in
This is
charge
the
of
problem.
making. And it's an emergency that it goes on.
Right, but this is the problem. As the Reverend had stated, this is an immediate issue that needs to be
Exactly.
addressed. We don't have time for mandamus. So what the port's going to do is we're going to recommend that the port take over the lead on this and get some resolution to it. So
Well,
somebody has to take the lead. We don't have time for mandamuses and any other legal battles. We have too many to begin with.
Well.
We're going to go ahead and vote on this resolution. Any
Again,
other comments?
I look for our president to step up and do his job and to ask that this thing be denied or be postponed and that he takes responsibility. That's where it lies. That's where it should be taken.
Listen, I don't disagree with you, Mr. Lawrence, but I don't have time for politics right now.
Well,
people
I
get
don't have
sick.
time for the
We don't know where it's coming
politics
from. The port's going to figure it out.
Okay.
Any other comments from the audience?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Farrar, if you would step up to the mic. Do you have the manpower to investigate this river? Do you have any ships or boats at your disposal to investigate this?
No, I don't. No.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ferrer.
Manpower or supplies.
I call the point of order. Call the question. Mr. Henry, because it's out of hand.
You guys got to
Question's been
stop all
called,
this
Mr. Henry.
bickering,
Mr.
man.
Henry. Mr. Henry. Mr. Henry. Let me explain something, Mr. Henry. Mr. Henry. Mr. Henry. We got to have some order in here, okay? We've allowed everybody to speak. We've asked the administration to take the lead. We've offered up as much resources as we can from the port to help out with that. Council Bartholomew had asked for a collaborative effort. We agreed that a collaborative effort is what we need with state, local, federal officials, but we had to have somebody take the lead. It's my opinion, and many other people's opinion.
Now he's going out after Robin. There's too much foolishness.
Many other people's opinion that the health department, because we don't know where it came from, should be the lead agency in this. But they don't want to do it.
No, the testimony was that we don't have the manpower. Plaquemines Parish government
Okay,
does
another
not now.
manpower issue.
Now, DEQ has this, and DEQ is working on this, and we will share with any information that comes our way. The problem is that, for example, with the acid leak, we don't get any shared information. So our responsibility, and it's out of topic, but I'll bring that up about drainage and flood issues.
Oh, I can't wait for that one.
Before I move to vote on this resolution, Mr. President, I'm going to ask you, and this is not a political question, this is a safety and health issue. Do you, in your health department, want to take the lead on this? If not, we will move forward with this resolution.
I asked Mr. Raymond Ferrer, who's our head of the health department, who asked him point blank before the audience, do you have the manpower to do this? And the answer was heard by everyone.
Okay.
So that is the issue. The issue with Plaquemines Parish government is lack of manpower.
Okay.
Mr.
President, I call the question. We're moving to a vote.
Mr. Chairman, can I respond?
No. We're moving to vote. Sorry, Mr. Durr. Let the record reflect that the resolution passes 8-0 with one abstention from District 7. Thank you, Council. Port, yeah. You wanted to follow up, Mr. Durr? I wanted to get to the vote, but
Real briefly, I do apologize again to the Port Commission about not reporting directly to them with the acid leak. I want everybody to understand in the room that both of these responses went through the parish 911 system, and we respond off of that. So fire, police, everybody was involved in that loop. If the administration does not get that information, it's going through your EOC and your 911 operators, Mr. President. So if that information doesn't get to you, our boats call in through that same system. We respond on scene, fire department, everybody's doing the same thing. So we are working, in addition to that, our boats are manned 24/7. Any assistance from PPG or anybody else has never been denied for access on that water to that incident, if there's a particular incident, at all times. And I just want to make that clear.
And if I may, and thank you, are you sure, because then I'll have that conversation with my director of emergency operations on the acid leak. Are you sure that went through 911?
I will tell you that the acid leak was called in by an individual to the Port Authority. I had him call 911. I refer all calls to 911. I took the lead, sent a vessel en route immediately, and notified the other folks. But told him to call back on the 911 operator system, so it's all recorded, and we have a timeline. And that's how it's handled in the Port Authority. So all agencies get notified.
all right, so just for clarification, we did move back to 7B. We opened that back up. Mr. Russo?
Yes, this conversation has gotten far in the weeds, and we have pointed the finger at a lot of different people, different agencies. I'm going to read you the charter, page 15, administrative organization, paragraph C. The Department of Public Service shall be headed by a Director of Public Service who shall have general management and control over all matters related to public utilities, telecommunications, solid waste, health, hospitals, environmental control, recreation and recreation facilities, libraries, and community centers. If you swore to office by this charter, you need to read it and understand what your responsibilities are and take care of it and lead this parish in direction about pulling together and getting something done. You know, and I didn't want to say anything because I tend to be the one that raises the flag all the time, but this is ridiculous. There's a health issue. We don't know where it's coming from. There's a charter that directs everybody in here who is elected. You need to read it. You need to follow it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Russo.
And if I may,
I'll let you rebut. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Russo, and I refer to Section 2.03 A of the Charter, which says that the parish government shall succeed to all jurisdiction, powers, duties, and functions, and that includes other political subdivisions and districts therein. And that brings us full circle as to where I'm not being included on what goes on in the Port Harbor and Terminal District.
My only comment, Mr. Cormier, is that we can sit here and we can litigate this issue. This is not a courtroom. This is a government that needs leadership and guidance. This is not a courtroom, and you don't need to keep on pointing fingers at this section and that section. Somebody needs to take the ball and run with it. That's my point.
All right, that's closed. Mr. Matthews, you have your direction. Good luck. We'll move to item 8. I thought you talked again, no?
No, that was on that resolution.
All right, all right.
No, the only thing I'm saying
Back to
is,
7B.
and to Mr. Morgan and everything, and to all of us who live in this parish, we went through this with the coal terminal. We went through the health department, DEQ, the whole 9 yards, with giving a clean bill of health. There's nothing wrong. So we ended up having to do a class action suit. We got the Sierra Club involved, and I'm telling Mr. Morgan, there's only one way to cure this problem. Because the test at DEQ come back and said we didn't have a stand. When we got our own attorneys and we did the test by independent agencies, we proved them to be wrong. The federal government came in and they did the cleanup. They made the coal terminal put in the spray things on the coal terminal. The grain elevator with its discharge of grain dust to the Arlington community. The Board of Health has never helped them on that. It came back to the Sierra Club and the DEQ to come back in and face. It's a shame we had to do it that way, but we could not get help through our state or through our federal government or through this previous council.
I understand, Mr. Lawrence, but we do have a process, and this is the beginning of the process. We have to go through that first. So,
And what I'm saying
I
is,
know.
Mr. Morgan made a valid effort to go out and take information. All the information he took, I'm ashamed, is not going to count because it's going to have to be an independent person go out and get that information. And a lawyer is going to have to do it. I'm willing to give him a good lawyer who did it for us. And it'll do it for all of us in the parish, not just his side.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lawrence. That item's closed. Moving to item 8.
Approval of the July 27, 2017 meeting minutes.
I offer.
Second.
Call the question.
Call the question. Minutes past 9:00. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Offer.
Okay, we have offer by Mr. Bartholomew, unanimous second. We will up to a vote here. Mr. Benny Russo. 9-0. The Port Harbor Terminal District meeting is adjourned at 2:47.